The Fire Race by Taffy Toast. Chapter 1 Nightmares and Memories. I was running, and I had no clue why. My wings were jammed on my side, so I couldn't fly away from this weird feeling. My tail was whipping back and forth, keeping me balanced as I ran through the woods. Leaves hit my face, tree branches getting caught on my horns. What am I running from? How did I even get here? A forest. I don't remember running here. I glanced over my shoulder to see a large black cloud following me, descending on me with great speed. In front of me was the edge of the woods, going into Rocky Mountains. I was suddenly terrified of the clouds behind me, and I was getting tired of running. This was very confusing. Everything was fuzzy. I can lose it, I thought with sudden determination, but then I wondered if I could lose it. I burst through the forest onto the difficult rocky grounds, my talons clacking against the rock under me as I scraped for footing. I turned around to see that the cloud stopped at the edge of the forest. Now I could get a closer look at it. It was dark, puffy, and what looked like lightning was flickering out of it. Some immense feeling tugged at the edge of my mind. I couldn't figure out what. My mind was getting blurrier. Flare. I perked up as I heard my name. Flare. Come here. Who are you? I yelled out, looking around for the source of the voice. A friend. Why don't you walk into the cloud, Flare? The voice whispered behind me. I jerked around, slashing my claws in the air in the sudden terror that spiked through me. No one was there. I looked around frantically. Black tendrils lashed out of the cloud and started pulling my legs. They were pulling me closer to the dark clouds. Flare, it's me, Ash. It whispered. Ash? I mumbled as I struggled to hang on to the rocky grounds below me. My talons were scraping against the stones, causing sparks to fly. I couldn't get a good grip on the rocks. Everything got blurry for a minute. Still clawing at the ground once my vision cleared, I looked at the cloud again to see something walk out of it. A dragon. All black. The only other color was its amber eyes. The amber strikes me as familiar. The dragon was tall and slim. Her wings were flared up on both sides of her, head tilted upwards in disgust. She was staring at me straight in the eye, causing me to struggle harder from the dangerous feeling coming from this dragon. Flare, you have grown, haven't you? She said, as I saw a hint of a dark smirk in her eyes. The things dragging me stopped. I was about a wing length from the dragon. Where am I? I asked her, cautiously, watching the cloud for any more dragons. I looked at her in the eye again, just in time to see her take a step forward. As she moved forward, the tendrils held me in place as I tried to twist away in fear. When she was standing over me, she opened her mouth, and her nostrils were flaring. I could see rows of sharp fangs as her throat started heating up. Even if dragon scales were fire-resistant, there was no way that this was the Ash I knew. She couldn't breathe fire. She was a water dragon. Then in a heartbeat, I was blasted, and everything went dark. I opened my eyes to stare at a dark room. The only thing here was glowing pink crystals, extending out the ground everywhere you looked. There was a faint, eerie, dreamlike glow around the edges of my vision. Flare? Said a familiar voice behind me. I turned around to see Ash, gasping wide-eyed at me, obviously shocked to see me. I, in turn, was just as shocked. Here she was, a shade of dark blue, with amber wings, eyes, and horns. She had her wings pressed against her sides, lashing her tail. We stared at each other in disbelief. You, she said, breaking the silence. You left me, she yelled, her eyes filled with anger and hate, but sorrow still. The torment in her gaze made me shudder. I didn't, I started, but before I could finish, she yelled out, making me flinch. Don't give me excuses. Ash's body began to shake violently as I watched in horror, trying to back away in this weird place. It was hard to move, hard to do anything. Then all her scales turned black, flipping over themselves until she was the same dragon that had blasted me, as some untold anger welled up inside me. Her eyes were still amber, but I could tell she was angry, hateful, and full of sorrow. I wanted to help her, a longing desire to help the friend I once knew. Suddenly she lunged at me with great speed, only giving me a second to react, tearing through my stomach as I cried out in pain. I woke up with a gasp, sweat dripping down my face and snout. Taking deep breaths, I calmed myself down while clutching my stomach. I looked around the cave. It was wet and dripping from the huge storm last night. I spotted Blade in the corner of the cave, sleeping peacefully. Blade was a crimson red with black wings and horns. His patterns were very dark gold in color. His slender body rose and fell with every breath. He seemed to be having a dream with all his muttering and twitching. I snuck past him to the edge of the cave, my talons clicked lightly on the stone. Looking out at the forest, everything was soaked. Even tree branches had fallen everywhere. At least it was a lovely sunrise. But you could still see clouds rolling in again. Me and Blade had found a nice cave in the middle of the woods to protect us from the storm. I started heading down the hill to the river we passed on our way up. As I got there, I leaned my neck so I could drink. The nightmare had drained me. It had seemed so real, but thinking now about it, I could see the dreamlike characteristics. I caught my reflection in the water. A white dragon peered back, its wings and horns a light green, her patterns an even lighter green. Her eyes reflected on emotions that were light blue. Right now it was sorrow. I had lost my best friend Ash in the past. Then Blade found me, wanting to come along with me. He was very cordial for someone who moved like a ninja. I giggled at that for a second, seeing my eyes flash yellow. Sighing, I started to drink the water. As I drank, a glimmer of green caught my eye. I reached into the river and picked up a small object. I lifted it up to see a small green rock or stone. I jumped in surprise as a huge sound radiated from the cave's direction. I placed the stone in my teeth as I ran as fast as I could for the cave, my talons digging into the grass and dirt. I reached the cavern to find Blade laying on the ground in the middle of the cave. Chapter 2. Small Humans. "Blade!" I yelled as I ran to his side. "Blade, are you okay?" "Ugh, my head." "What happened?" he said as he looked around the room dizzily. "I don't know. I was at the river when I heard a huge boom," I yelled. "What happened, Blade?" I asked as I started helping him up, ducking so his wings would not slap into me. I don't know," he says as he looks guilty. "I know you, Blade," I said, trying to gaze him in the eye. He was avoiding eye contact. "From the way you're acting, you know what happened," I said with a little growl in my voice. "Blade loves to hide things. He gets embarrassed about most things. I kinda woke up and saw you gone, so I got worried and shot fired by accident," he said slowly, looking guilty. He turned his head to the cave entrance and sighed. "Blade, look at me," I said. He kept lying. I could tell. Whether it was on purpose or not, he was lying. He mumbled. You worried me," he said with the saddest look in his eyes I'd ever seen. The end of his tail was thumping on the floor slowly. Again, he looked around the cave as if he was worried something would come out from around a rock. This was confusing. "What was that?" I said. I looked around the room hastily, taking in my surroundings. A large screeching sound. "Blade, what are you looking for?" I turned back at him, sitting there, tilting his head in a weird way. "What are you doing?" I asked, a little annoyed. He was hiding something. I know he was. I found something, and I thought it was cute, so I hid it, and don't be mad," he quickly said, still looking around. I started to stand up, folding down my wings, and so did he. He walked over to the side of the cave. Before I pull him out, "Him?" I yelled. "Who is it?" I asked, trying to stay calm. I was lashing my tail again, but it slowed to a stop. I blinked a couple times to calm down. My eyes have gone from red to blue. "Okay, are you ready?" he said, putting his talons into a small space in the rocks. His tail went still as he started to pull it out. "Yes, I am," I said slowly as he pulled it out. His talons were trembling as he held it out. Why were his talons shaking? "A human." "Blade, why do you have a human?" I yelled. The little human was shaking, pale white even, staring at me like she'd never seen a full-grown dragon before. Blade, being younger than me, made him smaller, but he was still almost fully grown. It looked so helpless, I had to grab him. "She." "It's a she," I said, correcting his statement. Though I knew the differences in several species, humans were easy. The females tend to have extra skin over their chest. Slowly I walked over to Blade, peering down at the tiny human. I puffed smoke out of my nostrils to frighten her. She tries to take a step back but trips over Blade's claws. She didn't seem to be a full-grown human either. "Where did you find her?" I asked Blade. He shifts in his sitting position. I found her down by the river last night," he mumbles, turning around to face the mouth of the cave. I got worried for the little human. I didn't want her out in the storm. Despite being a fire-breathing dragon, Blade was as sweet and caring as a butterfly. He held that human so gentle. His face told the truth. The look of concern showed it. I sighed as I watched the tiny human quiver in Blade's talons. I finally took a good look at her. She was a light brownish skinned, with chestnut brown hair, what looked like the skins of animals folded around to cover her little body. I sat down looking at the human. Blade was still nervously shifting in his position. I looked up to see Blade's face. He was watching the human. What do you expect us to do with her? She needs to be with her own people, I mildly said with no hint of emotion in my voice. Blade hesitated to respond to me, but eventually he did with a big look of disappointment. Well, I don't know. I just got a little attached to the little one, and I don't want to let her go yet. He looked at the ground, folding his tail and wings close around him. He starts using a talon to pet the small human, which tries to get away, but he held her firmly. The human was muttering words, looking panicked, but eventually she calmed down with what I hope is an understanding that we would not hurt her. I did not know much about human language, but I knew a few words and could understand some. The human was not much bigger than a dragon egg. She seemed like a child. I tried my best on the language, but it was weird in my mouth. Who are you? I said slowly. I tried my best to speak the human language. Blade looked up at me, confused. The human perked up at my attempt at a couple words. Surely this human could give me simple answers. I hope. She started talking fast, too fast for me to process what she was saying, but I caught a few words to try and make sense of. Words like dragon, speak, you are, what, go, and a couple like wow. The few words she kept repeating over and over were like, don't kill me, like it was something nasty to get out of her mouth. Overall, the message I think she was trying was she was amazed by a dragon was trying to speak to her. Flare? What was that? It was some kind of weird heap of sounds. But the human seemed to understand and get excited? What did you say? Blade asked, fast, but at the same time half embarrassed me. He had scooted forward with confusion and amazement, but it seemed off, as if the emotions were forced. Well, this was me trying to speak their language. I got a few words, but I am horrible at it. I was trying to ask her who she was, I answered. I got up and walked over to the mouth of the cave and sat down, as I watched a couple of birds fly around. I outstretched my wings as I yawned, not realizing they almost hit Blade coming up behind me. I pulled them back in as he came to sit beside me with the human. Suddenly I saw at the corner of my eyes the human trying to get my attention. I turned my head and looked down at her. She was swinging her little flesh arms around. I held out a claw to her, and hesitantly she climbed into my claws. I held her in front of me as she started talking. Not much I could understand. Got a few words, but it didn't make sense. Sighing, I turned to Blade. You need to take her back home, Blade. She has no business with us. I got up swiftly and handed the human back to him and prepared to fly. Where are you going? Blade stood up and watched me. To take a small fly around the surroundings. Be back soon, please. You know I don't like to be alone a long time, he said as he turned away from me to walk deeper into the cave. I won't be gone long. Don't worry your horns off about a small flight. I'll be okay. I did not hear a response from Blade as I lifted off into the sky. After the storm last night, it was dull, and branches fallen and torn ground everywhere. The sun was hidden behind a blanket of clouds. I turned into a wide arc, angling my wings for speed. I sped over the area fast, saw no threats, and soon turned around back for the cave, still watching the ground. I got closer to the cave to hear the howl of wolves in the distance, but the howl was not right. It sounded wrong, twisted into a dark path. It was not the original beautiful howl of normal wolves. Something was wrong with these wolves. I sat down in the mouth of the cave and looked for them. It felt like the shadows were moving themselves, creeping up on me, wanting to devour me in the darkness. I took a step back. Flare? Blade called my name from the cave in a questioning tone. I'm here. Just give me a moment. I called back, still mostly paying attention to the sound of wolves and the feeling of something wrong. A shadow did move. My head snapped in the direction, glaring. A dark wolf walked towards me, followed by more. They were wrong, not normal wolves. I growled at them. They snickered and got closer. It looked like they were made of the shadows themselves, all twisted and dark, their bodies slightly shifting on the edges, but most of all, their eyes, pure black like the void itself. I got my fire ready as they spread out in front of me. They started snapping their teeth and growling, stalking forward. Then one lunged at me. That would be the end of Chapter 1 and 2. Thank you for listening. If you did, if you'd like to hear more of my story, then please comment and tell me you would. The character in the drawing is Vatra, and he doesn't make an appearance until later in the story. Until Chapter 4, which means he would make an appearance at the end of the next episode of this if you would like more. Now, thank you for listening. Good night, everyone.